Alright guys, today I was hoping to share with y'all a few of my Slicey knives that I pulled out of the collection today that are going to kind of lean towards the side of what makes good cutting geometry. And I think when we look at these different knives that I've selected out, all of which are Slicey, all of which have fantastically thin, tall cutting grinds. And we're going to start with this Mr.Mr Cipher. Before I get started, I want to say thank you to all the channel members. Thank you, thank you. Thank you to anybody who subscribes to the channel, who comes in and watches my knife, my EDC content. Thank you. And thank you for anybody who just finds the time to come in and watch some of my knife and EDC content. Thank you. If you enjoy it, if you find it's worth coming back for, if you please hit that subscribe button and the bell notification icon, it would really help me out. So first out of the gate, we've got one of the longer ones in my EDC Slicey blade category, and it is the Cipher by Mr.Mr Designs. It's a full-size knife, probably PM2 size. It's going to come in lengthwise right at about 8 1/4 inches with right over a 3.5 inch blade. But that's going to be tempered by its very thin blade stock, 0.0895, very thin handle at under 1/2 inch, contoured handle swells out to 0.44. This knife is a front flipper only, but it is extremely snappy. Got the low profile flipper. And guys, when you talk about cutting geometry, this knife has it. It's very thin behind the edge. The geometry of the blade is very even. Even that front bevel, this a little thicker. Has a lot of bite, but it is just a slicey, dicey fiend. And a lot of that, majority of that, is in that tall, thin, flat grind. M390 has never seen a TS prof or a strop. I can only imagine when I sharpen it up, it's going to get that much more screamy. But that is, we'll call it Slicey number whatever, and this is the Mr.Mr Designs Cipher. The Cipher D is the same knife in a drop point. Moving on, we come to a sub $40 offering. Guys, this knife, when I did the review on it and showed it to you guys, yes, it's a Pyrite. Yes, it's a Pyite XL. Very solid knife, but extremely thin blade stock. So if we go to look at this blade stock, it's 0.1015. Behind the edge, it screams down to get up a little higher, 0.045. Barely anything. Has a great finger choil there. Very light in the hand. You do not feel the pocket clip at all. I'm saying it's about the size of the OG Pyrite. However, this is a paper divider. I'm going to say it's the second sliciest knife on this list. And it's got a very acute Warncliffe tip. Fantastic knife. Comes in around $33, $34. FRN handles, full steel inserts, wonderful button lock, snappy detent. Fantastic value on a fantastically slicey knife. This is the CJRB Pyite Light. Moving on, we come to the one and only slip joint in this collection. No, it's not a Jack Wolf. No, it's not a QSP. This is a Maxace Beetle S. The Maxace Beetle S is a full-size slip joint. that has kind of a ratcheting system instead of a traditional half-stop system. But it's M390. It's a thicker, full-size knife, but it has a wickedly thin blade. So the blade stock is .0805, comes down behind the edge to .0120. Wonderful brushed belt satin grind, comes down to nothing there. M390 laser beam. Again, it's just so thin, the blade geometry will just cut through anything we've got there. All the way up to the tip. And that is the Maxace Beetle. Probably the sliceyest slip joint I have, and one of the sliceyest knives I have in the collection. I wanted to share that with you guys, because it is a regular size knife. If we measure this guy out, he's going to come in also right at right under 7.5 inches. So moving on, we come to a fixed blade. Again, talking about blade geometry, this is the Denney Apprentice Generation 1 or version 1. This is in MagnaCut. It is a little street laser, pokey stabby, slurpy saver, but it is an art cutter. It is a detail cutter. It's just an absolute razor on a stick, guys. Short blade, but for cutting cardboard, for cutting through rope, cutting into packages, cutting whatever you may need to cut into. I wouldn't go feather sticking or batoning this through wood, but if you need to stitch up your hand, or if you need to do any surgery in the field, or if you need to cut up a bunch of tinder, feather stick, this little guy has a really tough blade. It is MagnaCut. It's super thin, super slicey. It is the Apprentice. It's probably going to be one of our smaller knives in the group, coming in at 5.5 inches with a 2.5 inch blade and a 2.25 inch cutting area. But man, is that sharp. I've also got this in crew wear, the version 2, also very slicey. But moving on, we come to an oldie, but a greatie. This knife you can find in renewed, upgraded models. This is the OG Mallory Phorus. Now, Artisan Cutlery and Dylan have worked together on other knives. This knife to me has always struck me as a quintessential gentleman's knife. I love the deployment hole, because I'm a deployment hole guy. I love the thinness of the handles, the depth of the back spacer, the thinness of the blade stock. That's S35VN. And the blade grind on this, got a nice choke up point. Nothing but a full flat ground, tall blade that eats paper, eats cardboard, anything you want. Plus, it's a very light knife. It's a very elegant knife. It's got very snappy action. It was Dylan's first knife under his name, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe not, but it's the first one that I became aware of when I first got into the knife community, and one of the first knives I pre-ordered. I'm glad to have it. It has stayed in the collection this long. Plan to keep it in the collection because it's a lifetime knife in my opinion. But this is the Mallory Phorus, the OG, and it is as slicey as any can be. So moving on, we come to, I was looking at my TRMs, and there are a lot of TRMs because they're all slicey beasts. So when I was looking at them, I think the one that has the most elegant blade geometry for being really slicey, gets the most thin behind the edge, is this TRM Shadow. It uses the river lock, which is TRM's version of the bar lock. I can tell you it is a much more refined version of that bar lock. And this blade, which is also very similar to the Nerd's blade, is made for one thing, and that is ripping, cutting material. Whether it's thicker material, thinner material. It is thin, elegant, great action, thin in your pocket, fantastic ergonomics, deep carry clip. It's going to be a little bit longer, probably going to be closer to 8 inches, well, right over 7.5, with a 3¼ inch blade. Fantastic slicing knife. Guys, these are being discontinued, so if you get a chance to grab a Shadow, grab one. Moving on, we come to a knife I picked up in Nashville, and this is not your normal Demko. This is a special edition Nashville Custom Knife Show Demko Shark Cub with a slicer blade. So, for one, it's a much thinner Demko, all the way from the body to the blade stock. Plus you've got this tall, half flat ground, thin 20 CV blade, which is a very acute slicer. Let me get a piece of paper. I have not tried the Shark's Foot. I've got a bunch of 80 20.5s. But on this Shark Cub, I've only tried the slicer blade. Because I've got both blades on the 20.5. I was really interested in this grind, and I really like it. Super thin, has not been sharpened. I've not reprofiled the edge. But it is a thin, well put together, looks good, carries good, has good detent. I think a lot of that's because of the way that that hole is designed. It just gives you a lot of traction when you come out of the hole. But it is on bearings, aluminum, sculpted handles that were special for Nashville Blade Show. And this is the Shark Cub Slicer. It is a banger, guys. We've got two more to look through here. One of them's not too surprising. The other one I think will surprise you. This is my little budget Oz Roosevelt. Guys, I love the Oz Roosevelt. I love the ergos of the Oz Roosevelt. I love the way it cuts. I know this is no Oz Roosevelt, but this little quiet carry drift in Vanex is so thin. It has such beautiful ergos for my hand. And it has a very, very slicey blade, like most quiet carries do. This just separates paper. Probably one of the top 2 or 3 slicey knives I've got here. The quiet carry drift is an absolute slicer. Again, I'm sure the edge hardness has something to do with it, but all these, I'm kind of looking at them from a layman's view and think it's got to be blade geometry. Looking at these knives, looking at the profile of the blades on these knives, I'm thinking blade geometry. And this guy is an absolute laser beam. Which brings us to our last, probably our funkiest, probably the funkiest Spyderco I have in my collection. This is the Watu. It's a Chinese or Japanese fighting knife, pokey stabby, but what makes this knife unique is it is so thin. It is such, even though it's a more of a fighting knife. Guys, this thing will make paper do its own division. And it is pokey, stabby, great point, great light package. So when you look at something like this, you're starting off with .920, and your handle is going to be in there in that .42 range. So guys, what I've tried to do is pick out kind of a variety of different priced thin slicey knives that I think are stories in effective blade geometry, making a knife cut well, or make it cut better than maybe another knife did. So got a few here, some good old reliable folders, some folders that are still available, banging little fixie, super funky little Beetle S slip joint that is an absolute laser beam. We've got our CJRB, and we've got our Mr.Mr Designs Cipher D, or Cipher. Guys, that's a handful of slices for you to look through. I hope you find this somehow educational, informative, see something you like, something you might have forgotten about. I love all these knives. Guys, I appreciate you watching the video. I appreciate any amount of time you spend with me. All I ask is please, after you hit that subscribe button, of course, look out for the guy or gal to your left. Look out for that guy or gal to your right. Please look out for each other. Go forward with love in your heart. Choose debate, not hate. And I will see you all very soon. I love each and every one of you. Until we meet again, which is going to be after I close this knife. Peace.